Hello, and welcome into the USL show. Got a three-man panel tonight. We're short of Kaylor. We're short of a couple other people here, including Wally, who's here on screen at least. But I'm happy to have everybody. Phil, how we doing?
Doing all right. It's been a hectic week a little bit, but at the end of the rainbow, El Paso Locomotive back in the win column for only the fifth time this season. So we take the wins where we can get them.
Yeah, and Ryan, how about you?
I'm doing well, and I would like to establish that this is the first USL show episode in the era where USL is now a year-round organization for soccer.
Crazy to think about. Yeah, I mean, the league has really grown, and we will dig into the Super League, which had a tremendous week. First and foremost, though, a couple people to thank. Goals TV, amazing partner. We've got one FB Races episode up, more on the way there, and anything you could want for lower league content, European soccer, the whole 9 yards. They're growing quickly. Our friends at Raising Anchor, the Rhode Island podcast, I think just partnered with them, so cool things there. Moreover, Added Time Outfitters, we've plugged them a couple of times, doing great work, really fan-driven in terms of the merchandise, the equipment that they're throwing out there. If you want to support something that's very grassroots in the soccer landscape, definitely check them out. And then our patrons, if you want to check out the USL Show Patreon, we really appreciate any support. We've already got some commitments from John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J., Christopher Cohn, Harry Austin, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, Noah Telford, Alberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rian Lacara, Tim Knox, NF Reg 30, MOS, Kunal Patel, Olive the Hedgehog, which never fails to catch me because it's a very fun name, and then Andrew Townsley. So thank you again to the patrons. Be sure to check. I don't know if we put the Patreon link in the episode description. We should do that if we don't. But yeah, that's definitely something that we would appreciate. Yeah. And with that, I mean, I think there's no other place to start than the Super League. We had 3 teams kick off this week, or rather 3 games this weekend to kick things off, 6 teams. Carolina really stole the show with the crowd they got, but Spokane and Tampa Bay were also sellouts. I'd love to just get some general thoughts on the weekend that was with the Super League on Peacock.
I'd be interested, like Carolina just continues to impress in terms of Ryan, you're part of the country in their support of soccer on all fronts, basically. It's just, I feel like NCFC might be the only low attendance games that I see in the Carolinas. It feels like everybody else is just like totally packed out, and that was a great way to start. But yeah, Tampa Bay and Spokane, like you said, John, just really showing the league, I think, like what it's capable of. I thought the broadcasts were high quality. I loved hearing the tones of, and I'm failing the Bechtel test already in our Super League chat, but Joe Malfa I thought was fantastic in the games that he covered, as well as the sort of the voice of the Super League in terms of the play-by-play. And overall, I thought like a great start to things, exciting games, high quality, like soccer on display. So you couldn't really ask for much more in terms of the Super League getting off the ground and establishing itself as a serious product.
And not just that, within the Carolina Senate, I think that was one of the highest attended just soccer games, not just for the venue, but that was the highest attended single game attendance record in the Carolinas for a women's professional soccer team, which is just incredible when you compare the history that the NC Courage have had in the States. And to have such a packed venue, I think Kaylor had tweeted about this during the match, that everyone was basically living and dying like on every pass. It was a tremendous atmosphere. And for Carolina to get a win over DC Power, or to top it all off, there was a fantastic photo that the Super League had posted online that had the stadium with the downtown skyline in the background. It was just a fantastic display for the league.
No, absolutely. I mean, having that start in Carolina, where it maybe would have been easy to assume, like you look at the Independents, who for whatever, like they're getting 1,000 people out to every game. The Ascent get 10 times that, It's packed to the gills. Like you said, people living and dying by it. What a presentation to put on for the inaugural match in league history. And I think you had a great shout out, Phil, for Joe Malfa. Josh Eastern and Marion Crowder were on the call for that first game.
Yeah.
Josh is somebody who's been calling USL games forever. Marion's been on a number of USL championship games as the the color commentator this season, and he's doing a fantastic job. You love to see the broadcast talent moving over there. It makes it a natural sort of transition if you are a USL fan who's dipping their toes into the Super League. You're hearing voices that make you comfortable with the product. And certainly in terms of the on-field games that you saw, really well played, really tactical matchups. I think it was a lot of teams that looked like they were in their first year. I think the most shots anybody had was 14 in a single match.
Yeah.
4 out of 6 teams were under the 10 shot mark. Like, you could tell the final ball wasn't there. You could tell that teams were still building chemistry. But the flashes of talent that you got were undeniable. And it just makes you excited for kind of the future of where this is going in the months and years ahead.
You mentioned the most shots, and I think it was Dallas who logged the most shots. And I will say Tampa Bay do snag a equalizing goal off of a corner kick here. Dallas's goal came off a corner kick as well. A really well worked set piece right in first half stoppage time. I think Dallas, though, based on what I saw of them, they were the team that got me the most excited in terms of, man,
sure.
They feel complete. They feel like the style of play is definitely there. They were able to do a lot against Tampa Bay. And if this is where they're starting, where everybody else is still trying to figure things out, Dallas is going to be a problem, I think, in the league this year.
What's going to be really exciting is to see Dallas's next match against Barcelona coming into the Cotton Bowl as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's stick to that Dallas-Tampa Bay game for a minute. In terms of the Trinity, they were the team that came out and looked like they had a real pressing structure. They looked like they wanted to pin Tampa Bay back. And this is a Suns side that came in with a lot of expectations. This could be that I'm just in a Tampa Bay-centric Twitter bubble, but there's a lot of hype around this Sun roster and the players they brought in. Meanwhile, I mean, the Trinity, if you look at Enzi Broussard on the right wing, who I thought was really impactful, she's played pro in South Korea. She was with the San Antonio Athenians in kind of the lower leagues. But at the same time, there's players like Gabby Guillen at left back, who's played in 2 World Cups with Costa Rica. And she was intercepting and tackling her life away at that side of the pitch, really stopping Tampa Bay from progressing. Impressive outing for sure from Ashley Orcas in net for the Sun. Kind of the reason that they didn't go down quite a few goals. So, yeah, I mean, I thought that one was great. Riverfront Stadium there in Tampa Bay, I think you can probably have qualms with the low camera angle, but just the way that stadium is situated right there on the water has to be a fantastic fan experience. Was happy to see Baker Mayfield and family there as well, because got to break out the local celebs.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Hannah Davison, who scored Dallas's goal. Great defensively as well, but obviously right place, right time, and finishes off a fantastic move. And weirdly enough, an alumnus of the Northwestern Wildcats and a native of Geneva, Illinois, a southwest suburb of Chicago.
There you go.
So yeah, it's now riverfront territory, I think, out there in the Aurora area. But yeah, Hannah representing the Fox Valley and the southwest suburbs of Chicago, and someone I think demonstrating to the sort of player that this league has been able to attract, because up and down this Dallas roster, you have people with experience abroad who are now returning to the States and are choosing these Super League teams as the places to come back to. Because I mean, we've got people with experience at Anderlecht, Rangers, up and down the up and down Europe, up and down the pyramid. And I think just with it does show the pull of this league as well, and what these teams have been able to do in putting these rosters together. And I think Dallas have done a particularly good job of finding finding these diamonds in the rough, if you will, out abroad to bring them back into the States and create some really compelling rosters.
And Tampa Bay is the team that is playing in the closest stadium to downtown in Tampa Bay of any of the professional teams in the city, I believe, which is always something to point to, closer than the Rays currently have. But a few things that kind of stood out to me was, John, you had mentioned, and I'm sure the trend will kind of break as we get more into the season, but all the games we had to begin the weekend was all under 2.5 goals, and I'm just still waiting on getting betting odds for the Super League onto any of these sports books. They're not there yet, but hopefully that's a request that's in the works.
Yeah, it was a conspicuous absence of player stats on FOPMob for me. That was the one that really caught me.
Yeah, that is one thing that I will say the league probably should have had sorted out prior to the weekend, because the easiest way for people to connect with this stuff is when your phone is pushing you notifications and is like telling you who's doing well, whatever, and you're able to easily sort of get the story of the game. I know, like, for myself, FOPMob is like the quickest way to be like, what happened here, if I haven't watched the game myself, and I have to do deeper digging if not. So yeah, I would say the FOPMob thing is definitely one to the league of like, please sort as soon as possible.
It's an interesting proposition because it tends to be an Opta data issue, whereas like when you had the Jägermeister Cup coming into play, they were quicker to get that integrated. And it's probably because they had the teams, they had the players loaded in already.
Right.
But you wish that they could have had it for week one. Hopefully, as the league continues to kind of pop up and really get on the radar, they'll have it sorted in the next month or so.
For sure.
Yeah, let's stay. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I did just want to, like, with the Spokane, if you were going to Spokane.
Yeah, that's next, exactly where. Yeah.
So Amina Ekic,
yeah,
problem for everybody. I think we knew going in that this is like a big acquisition, obviously, for Spokane and for the league in general. The nutmeg to earn the penalty, just the sort of skill that you love to see. And yeah, that in and of itself, it's like that should go into the highlights package or marketing packages for the league in terms of just like the level of play on offer, because you love to see someone who backs himself enough to take that on in the first place. They get the penalty, and then Amina puts it away herself. So yeah, and Spokane again, just a really impressive showing. Although the one unserious thing I'll say about this game is I did like how it felt like FC Tulsa inter squad scrimmage with the black and gold, like the black and gold and white colors of Spokane and the like mint of Fort Lauderdale. It felt like we were including all of FC Tulsa's colorways in one match, not to overshadow, but I thought that was funny.
I think Spokane stood out to me because they felt, whereas like Dallas felt like they had a real defensive mentality in mind, Spokane felt very intentional with the offensive shape. They were quite vertical, for one, trying to play with control, but with real tempo, getting upfield. They almost had a kind of false nine thing going on with Mackenzie Weinert, a player who's on loan from the Seattle Reign. I thought she was fantastic. She's clearly two-footed. There was a switch she hit out to the right. She was taking shots on her left foot for much of the game. That's going to be an impressive weapon when you think about the arsenal of pieces that they have in attack already. Fort Lauderdale, on the other hand, definitely felt disconnected. I think the shape was muddled. I couldn't really tell what they were trying to do in terms of the strategy. How do you want to break Spokane down? I know it's hard, really, when you don't have any game tape, like you don't know how these teams are going to play. I expect they'll get better as the weeks go on. But yeah, this felt like a really positive result for Spokane. And of course, a shout out to the 5K people who showed up and filled that stadium, by the way.
And with this upcoming weekend, we'll have the debut of another Super League team in Lexington's side in the league as well. So they'll travel to Carolina, and then Tampa Bay will get to host DC Power on the weekend as well.
Yeah, and DC Power, the only team in league history to have lost a game right now.
it's a
Without a
tough
goal.
it's a tough honor to hold.
Yeah, so they went into that big crowd in Carolina. They lost a 1-0 game. Kind of a tale of two halves where the Ascent look dominant early. They do what they need to do. The Power can't quite respond, even though they look positive. I thought this was a game where the Ascent's attacking movement was a standout again. Audrey Harding, in particular, kind of playing a second striker role in their shape, making lots of these clever runs out to the right, getting into the half space, bending that defense effectively in the early going. The Power didn't quite have a response early on, which, again, it's the chemistry issue. That said, I thought the Power really grew into the match. I think it's fun that I'm going to mispronounce the name, Frederic Brillant, who he's a Frenchman. He's got 150 MLS appearances, kind of came through with DC United at the end of his career, was an assistant there, has stayed in that local scene, now become the DC Power coach. Cool to see. And I'm fascinated by kind of the way that the Power are going to be able to integrate into that market in particular, just because it's so crowded with soccer and has the active NWSL team. But on the Ascent side, like great performance, great to see them do it in front of the home fans.
And that might be, from the Ascent, probably my so far favorite kid of the league.
That color scheme is just like so good and unique. I think yeah, the way they've done it, it could have easily been sort of Reno 1868 vibes, and it like blends all of the colors quite well. And DC Power, I will just continually make the Max Power reference from The Simpsons of DC Power. They're the club whose name you'd love to touch, but you mustn't touch.
I'll tell you what, I'm trying to build out some of the statistical side of things and like do my graphics with the team logos. The number of times I fell into the trap of just searching DC Power and getting all sorts of stuff about direct current was ridiculous.
It's Chicago Fire, but like 1,000 times worse SEO wise.
I think my quibble really with DC was that the contrast between the numbers and their kit color was killing me. Like I could not make out who the players were, which like, I mean, hey, it's week one. I'm trying to like learn these human beings. That makes it just a certain degree more difficult for me to get integrated there. So hoping they come out with a better look, at least in terms of contrast for the home kit. Yeah, fingers crossed. Any other Super League thoughts? I know, yeah, like you said, Ryan, we've got a nice little slate coming up. My Brooklyn FC is off for another week after this, so got to wait for that one. But
they're keeping you waiting. I think, like you said, I think it's off to a good start. I think this is a league where this season is, and not to denigrate anything that they're going to do this season, but this is about establishing themselves because we've got more teams in the pipeline that are going to be joining this league. And I think as more teams join the league and as it builds out and become like the schedule gets fuller, the calendar gets fuller, and the years go by, like I think this is just about like getting it into the consciousness, making sure people understand what it is, that it's real soccer that's happening now. It's high level, and you should go out to your local. And if you don't have one, like the pressure should be there for for your local USL team to be pushing for having a W League team or a Super League team, like, and making sure that they are involved on the women's side as well. But this is a big season in terms of establishing them as serious. And I think with all the good things that they're working on for down the road, I think this is a league that stands to make some big strides.
Yeah, and I guess my final thought from the Super League opening weekend was just that I was genuinely impressed with how well it was promoted on Peacock. That just like opening up the app, it was just going directly down to, it was right alongside Premier League, and just I didn't have any hiccups with streaming. We've always seen that with ESPN Plus in the past, where there would be a technical difficulties with the USL Championship match, but all of this was incredibly streamlined. It was easy to find, and it was a great first showing for the league.
Talk about timing, by the way, of being on Peacock right after the Olympics and the weekend that the Premier League is starting up. Like if you want to position yourself against things where people are just going to stumble into watching the Super League, that's unbelievably good. Well, soon enough in the Super League, allegedly, we're going to be getting a team in Chattanooga. Meanwhile, the Red Wolves are in action in League One, and they got absolutely hammered by One Knox in an interstate rivalry game. And with apologies to the Red Wolves, I think we're maybe not going to spend a lot of time on them because they're just kind of bad. One Knox, however, let Mark McKeever go as their coach last week, went out and played the rivalry game. It's a fascinating situation for a team that I think a lot of people would say has overperformed already in 2024 to see McKeever go. Let's get some thoughts on whatever is happening there.
The situation itself is so strange because obviously the club, we got the news months ago about McKeever being investigated for potential misconduct and like, you know, maybe he put hands on players, maybe he like there was just all kinds of things out there. And then there was sort of radio silence for quite a while in terms of like, nope, nothing going on here. And then we get his dismissal and the club doesn't like it basically is like parts ways was the verbiage that was used. A couple of local news affiliates just like ran with that. And it was actually the local NBC affiliate in Knoxville that ran an article that actually then, you know, 8 paragraphs into the story is like, by the way, USL had been investigating McKeever for this misconduct, like, yeah. So, you know, a while ago. But the club didn't confirm that that's why they let him go. And I thought the quotes from Ilya Illich and I'm trying to remember the player that they actually asked because the player's quote was, hold on, I'm going to see if I can find who actually said it. But the player's quote was, whatever's in the statement is what we're going with, which is an insane thing to say. Whatever's in the statement is what we're going with. I will find attribution for that quote because that is a real thing. Try to find this. But I was laughing at that. But I think in general, this is the MO sometimes of USL clubs who think that nobody's actually paying attention to like what's going on. And McKeever's dismissal like makes sort of on the surface makes absolutely no sense, right? From like they've like, yeah, they've been like sort of up and down or whatever, but they're solidly where we'd expect, right? And they probably have maybe even overperformed expectations like this year to an extent. So it's definitely not prime we're sacking the coach territory of like we're just, you know, bottom of the league, like no prospects, whatever. Like they've been playing well. So the timing was strange. The fact that Illich didn't really seem prepared to handle questions about it, like was strange. The whole thing was just very weird. And I mean, it's like, I think it's concerning in the sense that like I would have expected One Knox if you're wanting to be taken seriously as an organization, like you've got to own whatever this decision is, and they've sort of swept it under the rug. So I think like there's definitely some learnings here for people in the front office at One Knox because sending Illich and the team out there to field questions about this without like good talking points is a pretty significant miss in my book.
And shout out to defender James Thomas, who's played 12 out of 13 games this year for whatever was in the statement is what we're going with. That's iconic stuff right there.
Like, I wish that was paraphrasing. That was actually what he said in the news article. That is a quote, which is amazing. And more players should do that.
Yeah.
That'll make the USL 1 season review at the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the game itself with Illich in charge, and by the way, like having Ilya Illich, who's a real, like that guy in USL circles and has been everywhere, like just taking over the team is lovely to see. They didn't really stray far from McKeever ball, which obviously it was a short turnaround. I think the big thing for One Knox in the middle of what I think is a 7-game unbeaten run, or at least not having lost before penalty kicks because Jägermeister Cup. But like they've got the combination play down with the forward line. Kempis Tequila found form a couple months ago. They've paired him with Stavros Zakakostas, who I want to say he was with Charleston a year or two ago. Maybe wasn't all that great, but he's looking spectacular so far. They've got the verve you want in terms of the movement. They've both found their finishing boots. It lets Angelo Kelly Rosales get deeper into the midfield, which I think is crucial. One Knox is a team that could really make some noise, and it just makes this kind of out of the blue firing of McKeever, given the context that we know, given the quote, but not actually a quote, that we're getting from everybody involved. This story is going to come out at some point of what went down, and I'm sure it will be fascinating to read at the time.
But yeah, I mean, looking for Knoxville, at least kind of for the remainder of the season, they're already eliminated from the Jägermeister Cup, so they just have the league to focus on. But they're 7 points above the playoff line in the heart of the playoff order. And really, a win this weekend with results elsewhere could take them back atop the USL 1 standings. It is like super competitive within this top 5, just separated by 2 points. So if they can continue this great run of form, John, like you had mentioned, that there's 7 games unbeaten across all competitions, this could be a really dangerous team that you don't want to be drawing first round of the playoffs.
You mentioned the Tequila and Zaracostas partnership. I don't know that I've seen a more influential half of football from a forward than Kempis Tequila in that first half. Like, I swear to God, it could have been 10-0 at halftime. Like, it was crazy. They were absolutely running the show out there. Everything was falling to Tequila and Zaracostas. Like, it was just, in terms of like starts, and like Red Bulls just basically had no answer. Like, they could not stop it from happening. And they were just very lucky that they were even sort of in this one, like for as long as they were. Cause it was 30 minutes of just absolute devastation, from Tequila in particular, but Zaracostas as well was unbelievable. And like you said, I think consistent forward play and like influential playmakers can literally be the difference at a League One level between a championship side and a side that misses the playoffs. Like, it could literally be a guy. And that is, I think, like, one, an indication of the fine margins, but also two, shows just what a good chance with these attackers One Knox have of making it deeper on this year.
I do want to say that if you look at the numbers, the Red Wolves defense is like historically awful. Like, they've given up, I think, 10 more expected goals than any other team in the league. Like, it's shocking for a club that tried to overhaul their defense entirely because it was bad last year, to have it end up at this spot again, and for them to be still just in the thick of the playoff race. Kind of funny, but One Knox really showed that there's progress to be had there. I do think, by the way, with the timing of the McKeever firing, One Knox had actually started like hyping up that they've got an announcement coming, and then a day later they fire their coach. Which, you always love the optics of that.
news soon, and then sack their coach. I think too that is there a player who has a bigger discrepancy between their name and their nationality in terms of just phonetics, because Tequila being German is so crazy to me. Like it just doesn't compute when you hear Tequila being a German man.
When you look and it's Tekiela as the spelling, like, that's ridiculous and unfair.
But they've got a goal song and a player song ready made in Knoxville, so it doesn't get much easier than writing that one for the supporters groups. Yeah,
no, that's huge for them. Well, let's pop up one state from Tennessee up to Kentucky, where LouCity took Charleston apart, got the 3-1 win, did it with Philip Goderum scoring what might end up being the goal of the week. And that, by the way, was news that we discussed it after the show last week because we knew it was coming, but we couldn't talk about it yet. That's an unbelievable transfer for Louisville City. So let's go ahead and start dissecting the week that was for a team that is looking like the title favorite. stunned to silence because
Oh,
we
I
can't
figured.
believe how good this team is.
I figured I'd let Ryan start. I've been blabbing.
Yeah, I mean, Philip Goodrum is at least the second most notable person to join Louisville City this week behind Jack Harlow. But you look at this match, and it really just kind of establishes that if you are not putting basically your bets down that Louisville are going to win the Shield this year, that it's basically theirs to lose. They have a 4-point gap over Charleston and an 8-point gap over New Mexico for right now. But this match is just basically everything that Louisville has done correctly this year. You get 17 shots on this, 5 of them on target, and it took Charleston a stoppage time goal in the second half to just get on the board. We talked about it prior to the show that from most of the match, it was Louisville in control. There was a little bit of that second half where it was about fairly even for about a half hour's time, but Louisville just continuing to show that they are the class of the league. Adding Goodrum as the cherry on top to this really good team is just a phenomenal transfer that it continues that Louisville does what Louisville does.
I think it was literally I felt like I was in like a fever dream because the Goodrum news dropped while I was in the car. And I got where I was going and like checked my phone, and the first like For You tweet like was Goodrum joining Louisville City, and I think my quote tweet was the analysis level of WTF LMFAO because they had 57 goals in 22 matches before they signed Goodrum. Like, at no point is anyone saying like, you know what, Louisville could really use a goal scorer. They have been the best scoring team in the league by a distance, and they add a weapon on the level of, I mean, Golden Boot winner 2 years ago, a guy that we know can score goals in hatfuls, has been scoring for FC Tulsa. And I think like we are now at the tipping point of it's like we've heaped praise on Louisville City like from the beginning, and they've earned every single bit of it. Like I think we saw another performance from Winder and Davila that just like cements them as one of the best midfield pairings in, I mean, I'm almost ready to say in American soccer, like let alone USL. Like they are just like unbelievable. They were again like on fire. We've got like emerging talents like all throughout this team. They're just like absolutely crazy from top to bottom. I think now that they have Goodrum, I think we're at that pundit tipping point of we've been heaping praise on them. If they don't go and win a title this year, it will be a disappointment. They are the best team in the league. Like there is no one better than them. And now they got to go do the thing because they haven't done the thing in a little while. So they got to go do the thing now.
Yeah. And I will get back to the Radio Shock Jock line of questioning because I'm fascinated in this. But in terms of the game itself, I thought Louisville, well, I was expecting them to come out with a 3-man midfield, not only because that's what worked in the second half when these teams played in Charleston back in April, but because how cool would it have been to see Harris and Goodrum paired up top behind a 3-man midfield, or rather ahead of a 3-man midfield. Instead, Danny Cruz stuck to his guns. He ran with 3-4-3. He crucially let them sit back a little bit more in order to just steal the wingback spots, make sure you're not giving up that space in the channel for Nick Marcanic. It paid off handsomely. They were able to get out on the counter effectively. And the reaction from Charleston was very positive. Getting Jay Chapman's passing off the bench at halftime was the absolute right decision from Ben Pierman. I thought the move to get Prince Sadie to really stretch that left side and move Juan Torres into the center of the park was inspired as well. Torres is somebody who is constantly making runs inside already. He's constantly dropping low for touches. So in effect, you're letting him do that while also maintaining the wide threat from Sadie. It pinned Louisville City back, and there were a couple of looks that could have equalized the game for the Battery. But credit to Louisville, right? Like they kept their mentality, they defended well. The counterattacking goal from Jensen Wilson has gone under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
What a player he's turning into already from the start at the right wing back position this season. That goal comes when he's playing left winger, essentially. Everything about him in his rookie year has been so impressive. You get Goodrum getting the goal as well. unbelievable. And I will circle back to that. But like, I think I agree with you, Phil, that if you're telling me, are you taking LouCity? Are you taking the field? I'm leaning towards Louisville at this point. It's harsh to say if they don't win a title, it's a failure, but they've proven that they can beat Charleston. They've proven last week that they can beat Sacramento. They've proven the week before they can beat New Mexico. They're going out and beating their rivals in pretty resounding fashion, even if there are some foibles within the games. They're setting a standard right now that no one else can meet.
The composure on the Jansen Wilson goal, I think, is really what is striking to me, because Adam Grinwis has shown us what a good goalkeeper he is this year. He's been very, very good in a season where we sort of question, like, is Grinwis the guy? Grinwis is absolutely the guy for Charleston. And he comes out, challenges, and Jansen Wilson gives him the eyes and finishes at the near post. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this is from a guy that we had play, like you said, was playing like sort of fullback, wingback, whatever, was sort of like filling in. And now he's like a bona fide attacker as well. It's just, I don't know. Like, to me, it's gotten kind of ridiculous. And I do want to give, like you said, credit to the Battery in the sense that this was not like, I think the 3-0, right before, sort of like Louisville out to a 3-0 lead is a little bit flattering in the sense that, like, they definitely deserved to take the lead from the first half. Charleston fought back well in this game, and it was more even than maybe the scoreline suggested by the end, because at 1-0, anything could happen, especially with how Charleston was playing. So I don't want people to necessarily totally write off the fact that this was a very competitive matchup. And I think it's fitting that this season series between probably the two best teams in the league has ended with both teams like bloodied, right? And in their corners before any potential like Eastern Conference playoff matchups.
And we need both of these teams to meet in the Eastern Conference playoffs. If it's within a conference final with a spot in the cup on the line, that would just be a really fantastic showing for the league. But I mean, I think I saw within the chat, there was asking about the magic number when they could clinch the shield. Just the quick like back of napkin math. I was going to circle the date of October 5th against Indy 11, and that match could actually very well be a shield clenching game away. But what is very crucial for Louisville,
I'm deleting my Twitter account if they beat Indy to win the shield.
That's assuming that they win out from here and Charleston doesn't also drop points in that time as well. I was doing just quick back of napkin math. But what I think is very crucial for Louisville is they had this fantastic run this year. I mean, you have 10 wins at home with just the one defeat. Your next 5 games, you have 4 of them all on the road. You have Hartford, North Carolina, both on the road, a home match against Loudoun, then Tulsa and Detroit over these next 5 games. So there is opportunity to really stretch your gap atop the Eastern Conference. But being away from home for basically 4 of your next 5 games of the next month is a tall task for any team within this league just for travel alone. So I'll be very interested to see how Louisville approaches that. On the flip side, their final 6 games of the year, 4 of them are at home, including a game against Tampa Bay.
And hey, I mean, they've got the depth they need at striker now because of Philip Goodrum. I think in terms of the Goodrum transfer, there was a lot of speculation immediately. The first reaction, much like Phil mentioned, was, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Then there was the second wave of fascinating that they're paying the record fee for a player at a spot that they've already ostensibly got filled. Then there's the knock-on effect of, what does this mean for Wilson Harris potentially moving to MLS at the end of the year when we're inking Goodrum to a multi-year extension? It's a fascinating transfer just because of the knock-on effects for Louisville City of trying to divine, like, is it really just we can go get a good player who's had a transfer request? Or is there something deeper beyond the injuries to Gleadle and Ownby that's necessitating this?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think the Wilson Harris thing is really interesting because Harris and Goodrum sort of, like, in terms of career trajectory, 2 years ago, right? Like of almost certainly getting a move like somewhere else and like on that path. And then he sort of has that moment where Memphis sort of held him and didn't entertain offers. And then he ends up like forcing his way out, like, and it became a whole mess. I think Louisville presents sort of this interesting opportunity for Goodrum where Wilson Harris may well be headed for greener pastures, if you want to call them that. I'm not saying Louisville isn't a great destination because it totally is. I just mean that higher levels abroad, who knows what's in it, what's in store for Wilson Harris given the season he's had and given Louisville's penchant for giving players the opportunity to go where they want to go. So they've successfully sort of succession planned if Wilson Harris does leave, and Goodrum sort of puts himself back on the map if he does want to earn this move elsewhere. I know it's getting later in his career, and maybe he's not like it's crazy the difference a couple of years makes. It's getting a little later in his career, so maybe this is the destination where he wants to just finish out and play for a contender and go score hat loads of goals. Or maybe he puts himself back on the radar of teams at a higher level for sort of this later push on a team that's really good. So it's like, I feel like it sort of serves both parties where they're like, if something happens with Wilson Harris and he goes somewhere, then we've got Goodrum, which is like, we're basically giving we have a guy in the wings who's an elite scorer at this level. And for Goodrum, it's like, I get to play for the best team in the league right now, score a lot of goals, play with the best players, and maybe I still earn back that move that I thought I should have had in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating, massive story there with the Goodrum move. LouCity continues to do everything right. Speaking of another club who's leading their conference right now, New Mexico United, not only coming off pretty well from a pretty busy stretch, but the big news today on the stadium front that the city council in an 8-1 vote rejected some pretty frivolous and silly, not in my backyard people who were trying to oppose the stadium project. Huge stuff there. I think everyone agrees that the lab is a unique atmosphere for them, but it's absolutely in their best interest to land somewhere permanent in the longer term. So, and by the way, they're third in the league attendance yet again with a mark just barely under 10,000 right now. Probably going to end above the 10,000 number as we get into the playoff stretch. So yeah, New Mexico thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a fan base that has always really excelled when they got into the league in terms of its atmosphere and support. And it just to be able to get their own soccer specific stadium would just be a monumental boost for that team within their region and just for the stability of the club. That John, you had mentioned it, that they're always in the upper echelons of attendances within the league, and it could very well become the marquee home of a soccer specific stadium in the Western Conference and be up there with your Louisvilles, your Al Langs as well, within USL as a whole.
I think organizationally too, like New Mexico United have just made a lot of really good decisions, and they always do think, it can be easy to get like sort of cynical about this stuff, especially when it comes to stadium deals and city councils and all this stuff. Like it can be easy to be cynical. And at the same time, like most of what New Mexico does, and this is coming from a rival fan, I hate this team. I don't hate the fans, I don't hate the players, whatever, but I hate playing this team. And I think like you can't, if you take any ounce of objectivity, you can't look at what this team does and think like they don't have the fans in mind when they're like, I mean, they offered a bus like to freely shuttle people down to El Paso, like for the derby or whatever. And that is not something
I thought you were about to say that the charter flight to LA for the Open Cup. Like they're doing this all the time.
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like they're always making it available. So it's like, hey, New Mexico travels well and all this stuff, and they do. Like they have this engaged fan base, and the club does so much for them. And no, this isn't cry harder. This is why, like, I hate Do you realize these words are like poison in my mouth? I have to praise New Mexico, but it's true because they are always doing the right thing. Like, and they're doing right by their fans. They're doing right by and they're building a competitive team in the process. They're not doing one at the expense of the other. It could be easy to sit back and say, oh, we're investing in the stadium and we're investing in this and that. And like, oh, we paid for the bus. Like, you know, so that's why we don't have like X, Y, and Z players that would make us better. They're competitive and they're taking care of their fans and they're getting a stadium deal done. Like, this is an organization that is operating at high levels. And they're not doing it through like buying the league or anything like that. They've built like a competitive team from a lot of players who were sort of cast-offs. There were some League One guys that got brought up. There were some MLS Next Pro guys that got brought up. And have been like amazing contributors in a team that's very good in the West. So yeah, all things considered, it is it's an organization that just continues to make good decisions. And they're getting rewarded for that right now with the stadium deal, hopefully getting closer to getting done. So yeah, it's great to see, and shout out to the organization for continuing to do right by the people that support them.
Yeah, Peter Trevisani, everybody involved with that club.
Yeah.
Setting a culture that is completely distinct and completely New Mexico, but completely operating in the way you want to see. So fantastic for them. Before we get into picks, any other stray USL thoughts?
I'll just take the opportunity. Locomotive won. Locomotive won a game. I don't care that it was against an injury depleted Orange County. Basically half of their starters were not available. They had a literal child starting in midfield who I thought actually played quite well.
Norris has been like really good every time he played. Yeah.
He's been very good. He got booked. That was the only reason that he didn't like finish things out. But I think everybody could probably tell that the reaction in Locomotive land has been quite muted to the win. Yes. And that is because like the only way that this win matters is if they go out and also do something against have another good performance against Monterey Bay, because winning against Orange County came off of probably one of the worst performances in club history against Sacramento. Sacramento's a very, very good team, but basically Locomotive couldn't do anything in that game. So if they don't go out and compete against Monterey Bay, then like having won against Orange County won't really mean anything.
In my estimation, that was a game where it finally felt like Toomey and Eric Calvillo were playing in the spots that they were meant to play in.
Yeah.
And I mean, the result speaks for itself, no matter what you think about Orange County right now.
And Jamali Waite still
unreal.
Is it possible that the USL's player of the season could play for the worst team in the league? I'm being dead serious. Like, the MVP might literally be, we wouldn't have won a game if not for Jamali. Like, we would have 0 points if we didn't have the best goalkeeper in the league.
He's incredible. I do feel like I need to shout out one more USL thing, which is that Miami-Memphis game from last Wednesday, where Miami takes the lead after 5 minutes. They're level after 80 minutes, and they lose the game 5-1 because Miami get a Miami. Like, that's such a perfect encapsulation of this club in 2024.
And honestly, I was glad that I cashed out that bet when I did, because I thought I was safe. That to start, I did bet on Memphis to win this one, but I bet on Memphis to win this game and have under 5 total goals in this. And I was like, right when they hit 3-1, I was like, okay, I'm going to cash out now. I'm going to take it. And I was so fortunate when I did, because the wheels of that fell off so quickly.
I don't think anyone could have predicted that was going to finish 5-1. And yet, John, like, to your point, it felt exactly correct that it finished 5-1.
I thought this was one of the best games Miami has played for 80 minutes. I thought they were defensively organized. They got what they needed out of Frank Lopez up top. And then it's like, you flip a switch and Miami shows their true colors in the debut match of Pitbull Stadium.
The greatest stadium.
Amazing. Well, I think we are good to get into the picks. And we're going to start with a game for two teams that made moves today. Tampa Bay Rowdies, coming off a loss to Loudoun, who just got Ryan Spalding back after a really nice loan from last year. Meanwhile, Detroit with a completely fascinating ad via Laurent Kessié, who's coming over from, I think, the Czech Republic. I might have that wrong, after being an ace from Memphis 901. So Tampa Bay hosting Detroit, and we will start with you, Phil.
I have Tampa Bay bouncing back in this one. I think there were some extenuating circumstances again in that Loudoun game that I think it just suggests to me that Tampa Bay will bounce back. Detroit, I think the Kessié like addition is a very, very compelling one, and I don't think he'll be like necessarily up and running in time to deal with what Tampa Bay is going to throw at them. So I do think Tampa Bay gets the win, especially being at home. I think they just have an advantage. But yeah, taking the Rowdies in this one.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, I've picked Tampa Bay in this one as well. Quietly, they've gone their last 3 games without a victory on their part, but Tampa Bay haven't gone 4 consecutive matches in the league without a win since April 2023. That was also the last time that they had lost 2 consecutive games as well. And when you couple it with the fact that Detroit have never beat Tampa Bay in Al Lang Stadium as well, since both clubs have been in USL, I think the Rowdies bounce back on this one and get a win.
Yeah, I mean, I've locked the Rowdies to win this one, just kind of believing in the rebound. But that game against Loudoun must have been so frustrating, where they're dominant for the first half hour until it's just one break right down the middle that really changes the face of the match. Obviously, the second half red card plays a part as well. I'm fascinated by the addition of Spalding, somebody who's going to compete for minutes at the left wing back spot. They've got Blake Bodley there. They've got Eddie Munjoma there. And Munjoma certainly has the flexibility to play on the right, but they're deep at that spot. Like, Nick Moon can't buy minutes in this team right now. It seems an odd fit unless Tampa Bay is thinking about a shape change. Meanwhile, for Detroit, a team that we harp on constantly for their inability to break somebody down in the final third, Kessié coming from that inverted left wing spot, he's a real triple threat. He's got great vision as a passer. He knows how to get into the box and score. I kind of praise Jessiel Cedeno in that same way. Cedeno is the raw version of what Kessié gives you, and I think he could be a real game changer, kind of doing what Ali Koot did with a little bit more verve and vivacity in the area. That said, I don't know if it pays off immediately, and I don't want to give Detroit too much credit for a win in Birmingham last week that was just the worst game the Legion have played all year. So, and yeah, too bad Kaler isn't here, because I would have loved to rag on him for that. But in any event, going Rowdies. And let's move on to the team that, of course, beat the Rowdies last week, Loudoun United, hosting Rhode Island in a fascinating matchup of Eastern up-and-comers.
Yeah, I have Rhode Island. I think they were extremely unlucky against Oakland. I think they've got a lot of their offensive issues sort of figured out, in the sense that they're creating a lot recently. And I think Deke scoring, yes, it was like late equalizer, all that sort of stuff, because they were sort of chasing the game. But Fuson was dangerous. Deke was like getting on the score sheet, I think, is really important. And they've just had the consistency in the 11 that this Rhode Island team, I think, can replicate what they did against Oakland against this Loudoun side. Loudoun didn't really create all that much against Tampa Bay. Obviously, they get sort of the counter to, like, the couple of counterattacks to land the knockout blow against Tampa Bay. I think Rhode Island is a good sort of a good matchup, in the sense that, like, I think they'll give Loudoun plenty of problems. They'll keep them penned in, and if Deke and Fuson can put away a couple of chances, it's basically curtains. So I'm going Rhode Island.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup for me. Just excuse me, given that both teams are currently on the better side of the playoff line in the Eastern Conference, both level on points with 33 and a 4-point gap to North Carolina. The winner of this game really puts themselves in a better position to ensure that they have a playoff game still at least on the cards. And what's really hilarious with this matchup is that this is a first-time meeting between Loudoun and Rhode Island, and we're in August of the season, just really interesting expansion team scheduling. But Loudoun actually entered this match having scored in their last 13 games. 7 of those last games were over 2.5 goals. 7 of those last games were both teams to score as well. So I really expect there to be at least a scoring in this match and a really fun game to at least watch. But I have Rhode Island winning this one as well and putting themselves in a better spot than Loudoun going into this final stretch of the season. Although these teams do play each other as the third to last game of the year, which could be really big for a playoff picture.
Yeah, Loudoun is a team that when they started climbing up the table, it was because they were playing a back three shape. And it was a shape where you got the double pivot, but you've got Zach Ryan often dropping deep to link play, giving you kind of a 3-man midfield at times. Against Tampa Bay, they went back 4 for the first time in quite a while. And they got Khalil El-Medkar kind of doing a dual false 9 thing with Ryan. It paid off quite nicely when they could break, but those breaks were rare, and it ultimately felt like Loudoun was a bit lucky not to go down early. If there's a team that can do that to you outside of Tampa Bay, it feels like Rhode Island is a team that has that sensibility. They play a similar shape to the Rowdies. They've got the personnel who can hang with you in the midfield. I've been interested with Rhode Island that they're starting Mark Doyle alongside one of Williams or Dequal recently. Like, you're not going with that super powered pair all of the time. Granted, when they were chasing the game against Oakland, it became a 3-striker shape. So seeing how Cano Smith is adapting and figuring out what he wants to do in that mix, that's nice to see. I think both these teams kind of negate each other. I'm going for a draw, but this is a real 6-pointer no matter how you look at it. Let's swing out west now with the Las Vegas Lights, who just had their 11-game unbeaten run broken against an Indy 11 team fresh off a bye week. Phil.
So I'm going for Vegas, and it has a lot more to do with Indy than Vegas necessarily. Vegas have been good. I mean, yes, they lost last time out, and I will say Hartford sort of ran riot a little bit. They weren't ever able to sort of like get them under control. The thing that I guess I would say there is a bit of a Bugatti shaped elephant in the room of like Hartford were really able to cause Vegas problems for the exact reason that I think like Indy won't necessarily cause the same problems and haven't been able to cause people the same problems. And that is that they are a little bit predictable in this shape. Like they're sort of easy to nullify because it is like the brothers Williams up top, right? Like it is the two Williams squared, however, with Guenzati, and that's kind of it. Like they just haven't been able to bring other people into the play. And with them being so predictable, I think Lights, they are a cohesive unit. They've been able to actually get an identity in this team. And I think they're going to be able to, especially with the form of Corey Bennett and the rest of that team. I think they're going to get one over Indy 11, a team that is just seems low on confidence right now.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, I've picked Las Vegas in this one as well. It really has been kind of a tale of two halves of the season to Indy 11 at the moment. I mean, you had this team who went on that very long winning streak, and now you're looking at a team who haven't won a match away from home in 46 days when they beat Atlantic United in the Open Cup. If you want to expand that to USL League play, it's been 76 days since they last won a match away from home. Coupled with the fact that you're looking at a Las Vegas team who, in spite of their defeat last week to end their unbeaten run, they have scored in their last 11 games played within this league. So I think Las Vegas at home, this match should possibly be a both teams to score, but I do have Las Vegas winning this game.
Yeah, I mean, Indy, as much as I want to believe in them, they've really lost the plot in terms of what made them successful early in the season. yes, it was the ability to push your center backs up, really kind of pin teams back with your offensive shape. But it was that supporting effort from the midfield, and often through Jack Blake, who's still coming back from injury. Aiden Quinn hasn't been able to replicate that quite yet. And frankly, I don't think that's Quinn's game at this stage. He's much more of a creative presence who's going to sit back a little bit deeper than Blake was. Meanwhile, Aiden Stanley isn't really getting the assists he got from the left side like he did early. Logan Neidlinger, as much as I like to see an 18-year-old USL Academy kid doing well, he's not a Budati, like you're pointing out, Phil. And Las Vegas has beaten teams that play like Indy. Indy wants to go long. They want to restart long, win the ball in dangerous areas. Las Vegas beat Pittsburgh going away. They beat a Miami team that's built on the long ball. They know how to adapt their shape, get out on the counter, and do damage to a club like the 11. So Las Vegas Lights are going to win this one. We're going to wrap up the Western Conference here with Sacramento taking on a San Antonio team that finally got off the schneid with a win over the weekend. Phil, we will start with you again.
I think, well, I've locked Sacramento to win this, and it's really not shade to San Antonio. It has much more to do with just how good Sacramento were against El Paso. And I think in the way that San Antonio has brought more adults into the starting lineup of late, which has been part of the turnaround, like getting people like Lucho Solonyak back involved has obviously been a win in just like making their attack more cohesive, the ball sticking to them a little bit more. Hernandez and Hawkinson have a bit of a focal point to sort of operate off of. Like that is just like making this San Antonio team make a lot more sense. All that being said, I think a former player of San Antonio, Christian Pirano, is going to have a field day between the lines. He absolutely ripped El Paso to shreds. He literally could do whatever he wanted coming off of that wing. And him and Jack Gurr are they just continue to be a problem. I know, like we talked about it out in Oakland. We saw sort of the debut of just what a partnership that could be. And that they ran absolute riot down the flank. I think the way that San Antonio lines up, it's going to be a little bit more of the same. They're going to have to work overtime to keep them quiet. And the bad news for everybody that plays Sacramento is that when you leave, when you try to go double Pirano or put a body on Pirano, it means that Phillips is running into space. It means that Nick Ross is operating in between the lines. It means that Portillo and Fernandez are offering that support. So I don't see how the San Antonio side upsets the Sacramento side that is now just humming along the way that they are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've locked Sacramento in this game as well. Even just looking at San Antonio getting that much needed victory they had against North Carolina last week, they still have just one victory away from home all season. That was 126 days ago, coming up against Hartford. And even though even though Sacramento haven't looked like the usual home team that they've had this year, they have 4 wins, 4 draws, and 4 losses at home. I still expect this Sacramento team to do well playing at home for this matchup. And even looking historically within this matchup, you have to go back to September 2021 to find the last time a visiting team of this series was able to win a game. So I have Sacramento in a lock.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Sacramento winning this game for a lot of the reasons Phil talked about, with the combination play of Pirano, with Gurr, with what Phillips can do. And I think that is going to be a really potent matchup against that specific area of the San Antonio defense where Mitchell Tainer hasn't been in the team. Trovaboni, for as decent as he's been, just isn't going to be up to par against what the Republic provide. Moreover, Jorge Hernandez had to start in the pivot again last week. He's playing as a defensive midfielder so often. Yes, San Antonio went out against an on-again, off-again North Carolina and did what they needed to do. I thought Jesus Brigado, by the way, making his debut after a loan from Chivas was a really impactful ad. But if he's doing that in the attacking midfield, and Hernandez is still going to have to sit back and play like a number 6 with Pirano and Ross and Luis Felipe coming at him, it's not a situation you want to be in. The Republic are too good to lose this game. So sorry to San Antonio. It's quick beginning and end to the win streak for them. And then one more prediction going down to League One. Really interesting matchup between Northern Colorado and a Greenville team that, for as good as they started, has really cooled off a bit. So one last pick, Phil.
Yeah, I've got NoCo in this one. Their last match at home, they took Richmond apart, and sort of the easiest way to tell, I guess, like, or comparative form was Greenville's last match out was the sort of tame, like 1-1 draw against Richmond. They sort of failed to do anything. Like, they weren't able to move them around in the way that Northern Colorado were. When you've got like Bruno Rendon firing and just like getting more people involved in the attack. They created a bunch against Richmond. They had a bit more of a tame showing against Tormenta last time out, but it's a long cross country trip, all those things. I think at home, and given the recent form and an impressive win over Madison recently for Northern Colorado, I think I'm going with the Hailstorm in this one.
Yeah, of all the picks this week, this was the one that I think I really wrestled with the most. Like, I think, like, initially my gut had said Greenville. If you look historically in the series, in the previous 2 home games Northern Colorado have played against Greenville, they both ended in draws at the time, in which I just found kind of fascinating given the travel. But you're looking at a Northern Colorado team who entered this game with 5 matches unbeaten across all competitions, and Greenville's form has just quietly kind of dropped off a cliff as well across Jägermeister and league play. And then I like flipped my opinion on this towards Northern Colorado, but then like something still wasn't sitting right with me. And when it gets to that point, I ended up on a draw.
That's the place to be, because I am going draw as well. I do think if you're Northern Colorado, I mean, a team that had won 4 games in a row prior to this past weekend, a team that unfortunately is going to be missing Yamazaki, their usual starting left or right back, depending on whatever side Eamon Zaidid needs him on. That's going to be a loss for them, but I think that they increasingly have found a way to be structured defensively. Meanwhile, Greenville feels like they're a little bit found out. Richmond, granted a solid defensive team, was able to sit in a very basic 4-4-2, give McKinnon the touches that he's always going to get in that left half space, and then prevent the other links in the chain from finding the passing angles, from making the dangerous runs. They had a quite nice marking scheme, in fact, that shut down Sebastian Velasquez despite him getting the goal. I think Northern Colorado is more than able to replicate that. I think this game ends up being pretty punchy, pretty low scoring, and I think it ends in a draw. And that is it as far as the predictions. One last call on anything USL wise that's catching anybody's eye. If not, we can move on to some final thoughts, and I'll switch it around and go with you, Ryan. What you doing? What you watching? Anything on your mind?
Yeah, so I've been craving to get into just, I guess, some comedy shows lately, and 2 shows that I've always heard a lot about, but like just never got around to watching for whatever reason. I guess for lack of not having the streaming service. Is I've been bouncing around a few It's Always Sunny episodes as well, but then Phil will appreciate this more. That I started watching What We Do in the Shadows. I did the first pilot last night, and I was just thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, this is the type of humor for myself, so I'm excited to see how it goes, especially since I saw their final season is this fall.
Like, just a truly insane show. The casting all around on that, unbelievable. Matt Berry, for anyone, you've probably seen the memes if you haven't seen the show. So, no, that's a good shout. So obviously with the Premier League starting back up and all of that, it's also this coming weekend is the first weekend that I'll have to contend with the Premier League and Formula One back. So there's a lot going on sports wise, but show wise, we were finally getting around to watching Presumed Innocent. We are I am halfway through episode 2, so we're gonna finish it up like over the next day or so. But really liking that Jake Gyllenhaal just showing a little bit of a psycho side. Not sure what's going on there. And then one thing we did watch, and this is, if you want to shut your brain off for like an hour and a half and watch a movie that is, I thought it was entertaining, but it's called The Instigators, and just on Apple TV. It's Matt Damon and Casey Affleck,
and
in
new Louisville City owner Jack Harlow
and Jack Harlow, who, I'll just say that I predicted what was happening. Like, I predicted Jack Harlow's like arc in the movie, because I figured it was going one way. Anyways, it is an entertaining, like, sort of dark comedy. Like, if that's your thing, I would say it's sort of in the, I was trying to think of like what it's in the vein of. Maybe like I hate to say Boondock Saints, because that's like a stupid comparison with it being Boston, or maybe a simple comparison. But anyways, two Boston guys who are whatever, try to pull off a heist and it goes horribly wrong, but it is quite funny. The whole thing was like entertaining without being, it wasn't earth shattering. It was just a fun.
It's not going to win any Oscars, but it's fun.
Exactly. It's fun. It was funnier than I thought. I thought it would be kind of stupid, and it was actually genuinely funny at parts.
Casey Affleck on the sly, pretty funny guy. Like, he's got that subtle,
Yeah, for sure. And him and Matt Damon like play off each other quite well. I think the dynamic actually worked. For a Damon Affleck production, it was very good. For a brainless sort of comedy, but yeah, enjoyed that.
Love it. Yeah. So, boy, I guess I started this about a week or two ago. I had never seen a Mission Impossible movie, so I'm just working through the whole series. I've got through it now at this point. And again, I'm not going to tell you like it's the best thing ever, but I mean, they're super fun, like an eclectic supporting cast. Tom Cruise just being the man. Like, what's not to like?
I feel like I still have childhood trauma from the elevator scene from the first one. Is that the first one? Yeah.
It is very early in the first one.
I can still see the elevator, like, and that was a very formative moment in my childhood.
The first one is so stylistically unique compared to the rest of them. Like, there's kind of nothing like it, and it's a spy thriller, but it's got like this harder edge, and it's really become more of like an action set piece series in a lot of way of like Tom Cruise trying to see if he can kill himself doing a stunt, but
trying to go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
I think every Mission Impossible film now is just they find out what is the craziest thing Tom Cruise can do, and then we'll build the story around that. Like, it would not surprise me if like the next Mission Impossible film is just him in space.
Yeah, it's just Tom Cruise actually in space.
Isn't him or Brad Pitt is like shooting a space movie for real? I don't know.
Brad Pitt is shooting a Formula One movie for Apple TV, so that's
costing like $300 million too.
It is stupid expensive because they're filming at actual races.
Well, it's the director who did Top Gun Maverick too, so it's going to be a
lot of practical. So they taught Brad Pitt and the other actor's name is escaping me, but the two leads actually drove race cars for this movie.
That's awesome.
They spent the amount of money that Haas spends on their yearly budget to be an actual race team.
Yeah.
Well, before we become an F1 podcast, I am going to call it a day. But thank you both for being here. Happy to have you both here, happy and healthy and ready to podcast. For everyone who's listening, appreciate it a lot. If you're on YouTube, thank you for coming in. If you're on a podcast player, come join the YouTube feed next week. And with that, I will hit the outro.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.